What is going on, Rotogrinders? Dean here at Dean78904. That is the DFS handle around the DFS industry. It is 5:30 on the East Coast, 2:30 West Coast, 4:30 Tennessee time. So of course, I'm just time with the flagship show here at Rotogrinders. It's called Grinderslive. Joining me today, straight out of Amish Town, right? Mennonite Town, in the Pennsylvania area. We won't give the exact GPS locations. You might have some stalkers, some fans out there. It's Justin Carlucci. We call him the Luch. What's going on, Justin?
Dean, what's going on? You know, I haven't had internet all day, so we're going straight off a hotspot. So talk about volatility. I mean, I was born with it. So I'm here, hour and a half north of Philly, in the middle of nowhere. I don't know who took out the telephone pole in Town Square, but hopefully it gets rectified soon. But we got a full slate of baseball, and I'm sure we'll have some difference of opinions. And I'm looking forward to it, buddy. It's been a while.
Yeah, for sure. I love this slate. Is there a town square? Does every town, like, I picture like kind of a small town, and when I picture Town Square, you know what I picture is Back to the Future. Like, I think those towns exist in places in America. I don't live there, but you know, it seems like a fun place to live, I guess.
No,
Town Square exists?
We don't have a town square, but they definitely exist. I mean, if you roll through some of these desolate towns in eastern Pennsylvania, I mean, I work in Schuylkill County. Man, there's some hidden gems there, but there's definitely some desolate and some rural areas, I would say, and we'll leave it at that. But the best free theme park in America, Knoebels, is in Schuylkill County. I'm sure some of the listeners might have been to Knoebels.
What do we do at Knoebels? I know, there's a park in Hershey, Pennsylvania, I believe, right?
Oh, yeah, Hershey Park is where they make the chocolate, man. But
there's roller coasters too, right? I think there's
roller coasters. It's the whole kit and caboodle. But yeah, but Knoebels is actually free to get in, so like you can go in for free and just pay for whatever you want to do.
Is like the teacups like the best? What's the best ride? You gotta give it the teacups.
I don't know. I'm too old for that anymore. You know, I got to a point where like I went on the pirate ship with one of my little cousins a couple of years ago, and the first time I went back and went forward, and my stomach started going. I'm like, oh my god, when did this start happening? And just like hit the wall where I can't do motion anymore. So the teacups are probably out for me. Or you know, what was that one that just spun in a circle and you're like up against the back of the wall?
Cyclone or something like that.
Cyclone, yeah. So like,
yeah, that was like the town fair, and it was always some shady guy running it. And it cost like 8 tickets, but it cost more than that. Cedar Point is the best park I've ever been to in Ohio. When they say Sandusky, Ohio, there's like 15 or 20 roller coasters there. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's been a long time, but last time I was there, it was completely incredible. And I lived in Orlando, so I know theme parks.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Went to school at UCF, represent. Hey, let's talk about tonight's 14-game slate. It is massive. It is awesome. We have pitchers, we have hitters, we have some hot spots. This feels like a really, really good slate to me. General overview, of course, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the pitchers first. We'll talk about our favorite stacks. We want to do our best to incorporate the chat. So whatever you guys talk about there in chat, what up, chat? We appreciate that. Hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications. We'd appreciate that as well. Football right around the corner, ton of football shows, golf shows going on, baseball shows, all the sports are sort of melding. We'll talk about the promo code in a second, how you guys can get some Rotogrinders access for a little bit cheaper than get a little $10 promo code. But yeah, as far as this slate tonight, yeah, man, I like it. I like a good bit. I'm kind of honing in, and you're talking about how the bat was, or producer Devin was talking about how the bat likes the Texas Rangers on DK specifically because they are cheap, and I'm like 28 game slate, get out of here. I understand why, and it kind of makes some stuff work. Oh, I didn't complete my thought before. Chat, put your questions in chat. Devin, I mentioned Devin, and like, yeah, that's one of his jobs, multitasker, but he will compile those questions in chat. Whatever's on your mind, whatever you want us to talk about. There's 28 teams, so we really can't get to everything. Do our best to do so. Focus on the stuff that we think matters the most. But yeah, whatever we're not talking about, you want us to talk about, feel free to ask, or just a general strategy question as far as a slate. Be sure to give us specifics. FanDuel, DraftKings, Is it for cash? Is it for tournaments? Is it large fields? Is it single entry? Yada, yada, yada. All that stuff helps. But all right, give me your screenshot. Give me your overview as far as this massive slate.
Yeah, I mean, on DK, there seems to be 3 pitchers that are going to be far more popular than the rest of the field. You know, Jack Flaherty finally back, great matchup, shouldn't be on a leash, makes total sense. You know, Corbin Burns, we know what his ceiling is. He's dropped a couple of 70 bombs over on FanDuel this season. You know, not the greatest matchup against Cincinnati, but still going to command a ton of ownership. German Marquez is away from Coors, and he's generally been pretty good when he's been away from Coors. And even in Colorado, he's been half decent. So, and he's playing the Cubs. I mean, God, the strikeout rates on this team, it's just, I saw a Twitter post today about what can we do about anti-tanking with the Orioles? Well, I mean, maybe we can talk about the Cubs too, because, man, I mean, there's some power in Chicago, but, you know, the strikeout rates there make Marquez really appealing. Plenty of opportunity to get some leverage on the hitting side today, by the way, in large field GPPs. You know, you mentioned
tanking is a weird word to you, but not to cut you off, but I was thinking tanking it because there's really no tanking in baseball. Like there is and there isn't, because you know there's no lock first round. You know, first, but very rarely does that come along. And like the Orioles, one of the things they're doing right now to like save, just sort of like they keep their guys longer. They have the number one prospect in all of baseball. He's been one of the number one prospects in baseball. Well, top 2, top 3, the catcher. They just don't bring him up because what's the point? And they want to save him, you know, as far as control. And I think they now have a top pitcher as well too. They have a whole bunch of guys in the top 100. So, but they're just compiling talent. And you know, what's the point of bringing the guy up? That they de-incentivize you to let him get some major league run, unfortunately. Absolutely. But that's not important. We care about daily fantasy sports. We care about today and today only. That doesn't matter about how good the Orioles are going to be in 4 years. Who cares? So finish your thought. I cut you off. I apologize.
No, it's all good. You know, I'm just saying there's some spots for some decent amount of leverage based on some of this chalk. You know, Charlie Morton's in play. I'm just running down the pitchers. Charlie Morton in play because the Yankees. I always have a sprinkle of Charlie Morton or whoever's going against the Yankees in large field GPPs, just based on, you know, their high K rates typically. But you mentioned a pitcher you like, and I have one I like that's flying kind of under the radar. So I'll go first. I like Madison Bumgarner at his price. He's been surprisingly pretty good since he's been off the DL, and you know, this Pittsburgh lineup is looking a little bit different than it was, you know, let's say 2 months ago. Some higher K rates in that lineup, some younger guys getting some time. So I actually like Bumgarner on DK, and we got him projected at 10% ownership. I'm not saying he has 40-point ceiling here, but at 7,100, you can definitely find ways to exceed value, especially at Pittsburgh in that ballpark.
Yeah, and hey, that's a good. So we're going to knock out our promo, which talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks, if you use the promo code Grinders, GRINDERS, with your first deposit for 100% deposit bonus up to $100. We're going to show on the screen. I actually, full disclosure, I stole this from Will. Will, Chief Justice, has always posted his picks on Prize Picks on the Twitter machine. He has some videos here at RG as well. And I didn't do my job. I did not select a couple of winners before the show started. I'm like, oh boy, does Will have anybody post today? And I'm like, oh, I like exactly who Will has. And that was one of them, Madison Bumgarner. And the other one, it's, you know, that's not who I want to really lead with, but we live the world of a salary cap, and he's 7.1K on DK for that reason. I personally have him in the rankings today at 4th. He's my 4th favorite pitcher, DK specific, at 7.1K. And I think that Pittsburgh lineup, I want to double check. Yeah, that Pittsburgh lineup we got today, you know how we used to think of the Pirates as a team that they can't hit, but they make plenty of contact? This team now can't hit and can't hit. They can't hit and they can't hit because they don't hit the ball either. With the exception of Newman 4.8% as far as striking out this season versus lefties. This lineup collectively, now they added Chavis from Boston. It's not a huge sample size, but he's leading off at 37%. Colin Moran left on left at 27%. Gamble left on left at 33%. Collectively, it's 27.9%. That is a huge number. I mean, I'm going to guess that's the biggest number on the slate. Of course, Madison Bumgarner, especially in the year 2021, his K rate's not great, 21%, but good enough. And he's also a guy that could theoretically go like 7+ innings. He's a guy that can do that. He's a horse. They pay him. And, you know, why not? They'll let him go. There's no real concern about his arm at this time of year. He's one of the guys that they'll go give him 100 pitches or so. And it's weird how this is kind of the conversation we're leading to. The other one that Will was featuring over there in Prize Picks was Cleveland, and I liked it as well. We know who drew the best pitching umpire in all of baseball behind the plate. He's facing the aforementioned Texas Rangers, who, guess what? They strike out a ton as well. They got Tavares leading off. Tavares, small sample, but 45% striking out versus righties. You know, Morgan, not this great case savant, but 22.9% is solid, 5.6% as far as walks. That's solid. There's two contact hitters that Kiner Falefa and Ibanez. Besides that, there's a bunch of red. If you look at the plate IQ, 27.6%. So I don't know. I'm going to guess those are the top two spots tonight as far as exploiting pitching strikeouts. Of course, these aren't the most strikeout savvy pitchers, but whatever their normal number is, and I think we have it at 4.5. We both like over 4.5 strikeouts. That's the number they have on Prize Picks. Of course, you got to shop around, and I can't imagine it's lower anywhere else. I would imagine it's a little bit higher. But yeah, Eli Morgan and Madison Bumgarner, those aren't my two favorite. But as far as salary savers, I guess you're on board Morgan as well, right?
Yeah, I like Morgan, and I like Bumgarner. The two I had were Spencer Watkins under K's, taking on the Angels. So he strikes out a whopping 10% of batters, Dean. And there should be some decent hitting weather there.
What's the number? 3.5?
3.5. Yeah, 3.5. Yeah. I actually posted earlier on BetMGM, or not on BetMGM, Scores and Odds. It was 4.5 on BetMGM. So I do like that more, but I was okay with the number on Prize Picks too. And who was the other one? Luzardo under 5.5 Ks. Man, I mean, he's just kind of the unicorn of every slate, right? You don't know where you're going to get there, but he's been getting knocked around. He's walking about 11% of guys, serious control issues. And the Nationals, honestly, if you're on Plate IQ, you Rotogrinders viewers and listeners, this Nationals lineup doesn't strike out a ton this year. I know it's a small sample size there, but it's kind of like a prove it thing to me with Luzardo. Like, prove it. We know he was a highly touted prospect, still is. If there's anybody that can fix him, it's Miami, right? He's like the new Ray Searage from Pittsburgh. Like, maybe Miami could fix this guy. So we'll see what happens. So those are my two for Prize Picks, but I do really like the Morgan and the Bumgarner overs as well.
The sample's small, but like that's just Washington team has a lot of power against lefties this year too, for what it's worth. I'm going to stretch it back to last year and see if they get anything different. Yeah, I mean, Thomas leading off is not anybody we're afraid of, obviously, but it's, small samples are dealing with it. Zimmerman can still hit. He's an old man, but he can still hit baseballs. Yeah, I think Luzardo he's so cheap and everything's kind of baked into the price, but it's inarguable. He's been bad. He just has been bad. I would just hope that Miami just shuts him down. Like, why are you pushing him? He got his win the last time out, or the time before, I don't recall. I know they traded for him and they want to make a stand, but the season's over for Miami, and looking forward to next year, that their rotations should be awesome, assuming like most of those pieces stick around. I don't know what to do with him. Thankfully, DK makes it easy enough where they don't price the really, really good pitchers too high, where you could just roster yourself, Jack Flaherty and Corbin Burns and Aaron Marquez. And I think those are the top three on DK if salary wasn't a thing. We talked about Marquez, and that price just seems too cheap for a Cub matchup. Now, it is worth noting, this is a good time to kind of mention weather today. It's hot. Weather edge is popping for Chicago. Of course, you have to hit the baseball for it to matter. And these Cubs team, they're not good and they strike out a good bit. But let me give it a refresh before I talk about it. Things may have changed. I know Baltimore was popping as well, too, from a weather edge perspective. You guys get the weather edge as part of your MLB package, as part of your Rotogrinders package. You can get $10 off your first month. Just one sport. Why would you get just baseball now? That doesn't make any sense. Just a month and change left. Well, there's playoffs, but you know what I'm saying. Get all the sports, $10 off: football, baseball, basketball, all the fringe stuff, MMA, golf, hockey, WNBA, tennis, every single sport you can think of, LOL, with the exception of NASCAR. That is a la carte. All right, I'm doing the refresh here on Weather Edge. 178 game sample in Baltimore. We got the fire emoji, 18% bump in homers, 7.5% bump in runs. And where else do we have it? I think we had the fire emoji in Atlanta. Well, that's a small sample because it's a new ballpark. Chicago, 58 game sample, 12.5% bump as far as home runs. Wind is blowing out left center, 6 miles per hour. It's not a ton, but it's something, and it's also 89 degrees. So that's just too cheap for Marquez, right? He seems like a guy that's like just underpriced on DK.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was 9K over on FanDuel. So there's some real price discrepancies between both major sites today. Looking at FanDuel, another one is Bumgarner is 88 on FanDuel and 71 on DK. So I'm more prone to play him on DK than FanDuel. And I like for multiple reasons, but you look at that Pittsburgh lineup, and in addition to the high K rates this season, none of them draw walks, and most of them keep the ball on the ground. Like, they don't elevate the baseball. like those are very high ground ball rates. And, Bumgarner's gonna be throwing a lot of cutters and stuff that's coming in on the hitters. So I think this is a perfect matchup for Bumgarner. Although I don't know if I like it at 88 on FanDuel as much. I think there's some guys with sick upside today and better price per dollar options. But, over props, DK, etc. I'm hoping it's Madison Bumgarner day, Dean.
What about Corbin Burns? If salary wasn't a thing, he's probably the top guy. I believe he has the biggest K rate on the slate. Yeah, 35.1%. ERA, if you care about such thing as ERA, it's 2.13, but that's backed up by a Sierra of 2.57. An awesome ground ball rate of 50.5%. Not the greatest ballpark to pitch in, but there's no Winker. Winker, of course, out of that Cincinnati lineup, so it's weakened a little bit. How do you feel about Corbin Burns? Do you think he's worth spending up for? We already talked about some of the step downs that are, pivot away if you don't have the salary for whatever reason you're stacking up an expensive team. But if you just want the best pitcher, it's probably Burns and, Flaherty 1 and 1A. Yes.
Yeah, 1 and 1A pretty much. I mean, I guess he probably has the highest floor. And as scary as Cincy's offense can be at times, they still have guys that have, below average K rates. 1 through 4 is scary, but they're all over 22% this season in terms of K rates. You got Tucker Barnhart and Akiyama at the bottom over 22% as well. So there's really no one in this lineup that just doesn't strike out either for Cincy. So Burns could just go out there and put on a clinic. It could just be one of those outings where the matchup isn't perfect, but he still does his thing and could still be in those GPP winners. So I think his high floor combined with his 70 plus ceiling on FanDuel, we've seen him do it. I still think makes him a great option. Flaherty obviously has the advantage in terms of matchups. Couple weeks removed off the DL. So however you feel about that, like if it was anybody other than Detroit or like Miami or a handful of bottom teams, right, we'd probably be seeing Burns as the marquee play here regardless. But it's Detroit. Flaherty has Detroit. So I can't fault you for playing either one of them. Gun to head. What are your thoughts here for GPPs?
Yeah, I mean, I think the bigger upside is Burns. Flaherty might be a tick safer, but I know Cardi doesn't like using the word safe. And in baseball, certainly not for hitters, but pitchers, it's kind of a relative term. Like we see some pitchers that get with 3 runs in the first inning and that they can, catch up and recover and like salvage. And that's something that I think Flaherty can do. I don't know what his ceiling is because St. Louis does still have a chance to make the playoffs. They probably think they still have a chance to make the playoffs. I think 538 had like at 5 or 10%, whatever it was. So, they're going to push Flaherty to some extent, but I don't know if they're going to give him 105 pitches. He threw 92 his second time out, 81 before that, his first game back. And the thing with Milwaukee is we've seen Milwaukee, they're a lock, essentially. I mean, I don't want to say a lock, not 100%. It's like 97, 98, 99%. Milwaukee's making the playoffs and they're winning the division. And we've seen them kind of sort of somewhat push back a little bit in their arms. And why wouldn't you, right? What does it matter if you pitch 7, an inning in this game, game 120, when you're already locked into the playoffs? So that's kind of my perspective on that. And like Luis Garcia is another guy with the Astros. Like the Astros essentially locked into the playoffs. Why would they push them? And they haven't pushed them. And I don't see any reason why they would push him tonight. I think he's a fine pitcher, but probably a little bit too expensive in some spots. So better on FanDuel, but he's probably not going to get the quality start. Maybe he gets 5 2/3. He can get the 6. That's basically where he's cut off. Just kind of brought Garcia into the conversation. But like, do you think about that stuff at this point in the year? Do you think teams are thinking about that? Like, that's obviously not 2 weeks until the end, but we're the kind of sort of, we know a lot of the position's been jockeyed for. We kind of know where the Brewers are going to be. We kind of know where the Astros are going to be. Does that stuff matter to you right now, or is it too early?
I think it's situational, Dean. I think you can think about that stuff. I mean, what if Milwaukee goes out there, puts up 7 runs in the first 2 innings, and you get to the 6th inning and you kind of just cruise like, hey, like we're saving the guy's arm. So I think there are a lot of variables that we're getting to that point where it's really going to matter 2-3 weeks from now. But Milwaukee's one of those rare teams that they kind of already are in the driver's seat, right? So I don't know. It's not enough to get me off of Burns today.
Yeah,
but you got to think about that stuff. It's time.
I'm not saying that, to be clear. I'm not saying you shouldn't play Burns because he's not going to pitch more than 6 innings. I'm just saying that, like, it might hit his ceiling like a tick, is just sort of what I'm throwing out there. Maybe I'm just being overly paranoid. 95% for the Astros to make the playoffs, 90% for them to win the division, and the Brewers 99% to make the playoffs and 93% to win the division. So, they haven't locked anything up, but they're going to make the playoffs and most likely win the division for what it's worth. Other names, like, I'm not messing with Cease and Barrios. They're both fine, but their matchups are too tough. I just can't see either one of them being the top dog on the slate. Barrios has been scuffling of late. I just don't want to mess with it. And it's not really baked into the price. So I'm not running 150. If I was, maybe I'd get a pinch, but still, even then, no, probably not. I don't think it's necessary. I feel better about an Eli Morgan who's cheaper. I feel better about a Bumgarner who's cheaper. Fetty, I think
I'd rather throw Eric Fed than those guys. Like if you're holding a gun to my head, I mean, we're like going down, right?
It's the Marlins. And what else? It's the Marlins. No Aguilar for what they're running out their 2 catcher lineup. Eric Fetty's not good, but he's okay. He's serviceable, and the ballpark's great. That Marlins lineup is terrible, and he's cheap enough where I think he's playable. I agree with you, and I'm not excited about it, but he's somebody I made a couple of Yahoo lineups before the show, and he's in at least one of them. He's really cheap over there, and it's the Marlins. And that I think we should mention Andrew Heaney, just because we talk about floor and volatility. His floor is in the negatives for sure. The amount of home runs he yields, he's jumped in the National League. It's a pitcher to pick on, but there is plenty of righty power, especially in that Atlanta side. Like the Braves are really strong tournament plays, and I think Heaney is at least in the conversation, for a tournament play, because he's not getting, barreled and banged out for homers. He'll strike you out. What are you doing with Heaney?
I'm not 150 maxing today because of my internet issues, and it would just drive me nuts. But if I were, because I do on FanDuel quite often. This is one of those instances where I would want both sides of this to some capacity. Not like crazy amounts of both sides, but he has had trouble giving up the long ball earlier this year. And the Braves are a strong offense, and they'll probably go a little bit under-owned today. But Heaney has flashed his upside finally through a decent game. His last start out with the Yankees. So I like both sides in this one. I mean, he's cheap. We know we know what his K upside is. 7K on FanDuel. Like, he's one of those guys in this range where we know has the K upside. A lot of these guys in this range don't, other than Morgan. I mean, like Brubaker on FanDuel, like, you're typically not throwing him. But Dylan Bundy's atrocious, and we'll get to him in Baltimore bats in a little bit. This is a bad matchup for Miguel in this range too. I mean, he's been getting touched up by lefties, and we know San Fran has a ton of them. And kind of the same thing about Berrios. You mentioned he's been scuffing a little bit lately, but he's really been getting hit by lefties. The White Sox don't have as many of them, but there's someone else we could talk about. So going down this far in this range, like, Heaney is the preferential guy if you're not pitching Morgan. I know you're on Morgan too.
Yeah.
So I'm not in love with it. I'm not in love with this range, but Heaney would probably be one of my preferred options in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Eli Morgan's my favorite in this group, or Bumgarner. That's DK specific. Bumgarner made 7.1K. And you mentioned Brubaker, and I think Brubaker even is like kind of sort of somewhat like, again, if you're 150, I wouldn't cross that out. That Arizona lineup is without Ketel Marte, their best hitter, and it's a great ballpark to pitch in. I understand Brubaker is not like spectacular, but he's okay. Yeah, I think he's had a tough run as far as matchups too of late. If you're kind of looking at him getting beat up, which has happened recently. Dodgers. Dodgers, Cincinnati, St. Louis. Not great matchups, but he didn't really survive any of them necessarily. Is there anybody else that's worth a conversation? Ranger Suarez. You mentioned Bundy. Revenge game for Dylan Bundy. Once upon a time, prize prospect there for Baltimore. I think
the Bundy conversation was when he was in Baltimore. Wow, he pitches so well away from Baltimore. Now he's away from Baltimore and he's terrible. He has a career, I think, 4.49 ERA at Camden. I mean, not the worst, but nothing. He was their ace at one point. He was going to be the guy, and he's not the guy, and he's pitching poorly, and it's good hitting weather there. I don't know. If I'm looking to trim my player pool, he'd probably be one of the guys I'm willing to cross out, even though it is the tanking Orioles. But I don't know. I'd much rather go Heaney or Morgan or even Brubaker. I get it with Brubaker. He's pitched against Arizona, but today there's a lot of guys in some K upside spots, and he just doesn't scratch the itch for me. Would cross him out though, but that's it, right? I mean, you go lower. We talked about. I'm looking at fans that we talked about. Fetty. I guess people have a split difference in opinions on Luzardo. He's coming in really low owned, but still, I'm still in the prove it mode with Luzardo, and obviously I'm on the under with my prize pick props here for a strikeout. So just don't see it there. I don't see much here. I mean, you got any other additional brunch conversations we could have here? A cup of coffee?
No. I mean, Luis Garcia is a little more playable on FanDuel just because he's 8.3K, but I can't guarantee. I mean, I don't love his chances of getting those 6 innings, but he probably. I mean, he could be efficient and go 6. They're not going to push him much beyond that for reasons we discussed. But if you are going to play Luis Garcia, that's the best place to play him. I don't like the DK price at all, in my opinion. On FanDuel, I'm going to play Eli Morgan at 6.8K. Like I'm just going to do it. Not all my lineups. I think I'm making 5 main lineups on FanDuel today. We'll see where we settle on that. But it's not that hard to make good Marquez lineups, and Flaherty and Burns is just, I don't know if I'm going to have the extra funds to get beyond Marquez and Flaherty, but maybe our ownership will reflect. Do we have anything interesting as far as ownership on FanDuel? Because I'd imagine that Burns will be lower owned because it's just a little bit trickier to get him in there 11.5, and the stops are good along the way. I have the DK ownership up in front of me.
I'll check it up now. While we're bringing this up, I will say, like, earlier in the year, and maybe at one point there was this narrative against the Royals that they don't strike out a ton. But, there's some K rates there. Look at, obviously Sal Perez is a bad dude, but he still strikes out almost 30% of the time, doesn't draw walks. Dozier, 26% strikeout rate, O'Hearn, 27%, Michael Taylor, 25%.
You're right.
Rivera. So, like, I think maybe that stigma is still stuck with the Royals that you can't target against them with a pitcher. And Garcia has a 30% K rate against righties and more than respectable 26% against lefties. So I like this little cup of coffee we had with Garcia now that I'm digging deep.
Maybe I'm overreacting, but I still think he's too expensive. I like the FanDuel price. The DK one, I don't know. I mean, it's just so close to Flaherty and the Marquez.
I don't have it in front of me. What is he on DK?
All right, let me go ahead. I'm jumping to all right, I think I have. All right, so it's Flaherty, Burns. Okay, so he is, why can't I find? Yes, he's 9.7 on DK. He's more than Jack Flaherty. Yeah. He's 1.5 more than Marquez. He's 1,000 less than Burns. He's more than Morton. 2K less than Bumgarner, more than Bumgarner. I just don't like his price, and he could be fine, but I don't think he breaks me. But on FanDuel, he can go 6 clean at a good price.
In his last 2 starts, he really wasn't K'ing anybody. He had the Angels once. I mean, I don't know. If I had more time, I'd look into velocity, make sure nothing's going on there. But we know his strikeout upside. But you're right, not agreeing with that price today. More prone to play him on FanDuel. No one's going to play him. We haven't projected 3% on FanDuel. Like, if I'm playing 150, I'd have a couple, right?
But that's the other thing, is it last time out, he threw 70 pitches, before that 87, before that 85, before that 89. Like, they're just not pushing him.
Yeah, they're not. They're not.
And he's been pretty good. It's not like he's getting smashed in these starts. He's been up and down, but he could definitely go out there and go throw another inning.
So his upside might be capped. Like, he'll just navigate it around this whole, like, weaving around, seeing what we got here with him. So you're right that, if they're not going to throw him and we're moving here into September, then he might not get that FanDuel quality start, right? He might go 5 2/3 or whatever it is. So I'm with you on that.
That's always tilting, isn't it? When your guy gets the hook with one more guy, just let him get one more out. Come on. Yeah. All right. Ownership on DK. Do you agree with this? 45% for Flaherty. This stuff obviously changes the closer we get to lock. 39% the Corbin Burns, 34% the Marquez. None of that is really surprising, those 3 names. Then Morton at 23. Personally, I'll be lower than that. I think the field's gonna be lower than that. I think that's too high. Just because people are afraid of the Yankees, but I understand why. People would roster him because the Yankees strike out a good bit, and they lost their DH, just striking out a pitcher all of a sudden. Mad Bum, Garcia, the ownership falls off a table. Anything jump out to you that's kind of sort of somewhat interesting for me? I think Morton's a little bit too high.
I have the same thoughts. I think he's a little higher there. So, like, if I was in your shoes, if you're 150 max, and I'd maybe go half that. But I always, like I said, I always sprinkle whoever the Yankees are going against, because they'll just have their games where they don't hit and strike out. It's just what's been happening all season. So that kind of sticks out to me.
Tyler O'Neill scratched, by the way, just a heads up. An interesting part of the slate, every single team plays, every game plays an hour in at 8:10, with the exception of the Dodgers and the Padres. So we have every single lineup now, with the exception of the Dodgers, because the Padres just dropped theirs. It's Pham, Tatis, Machado, Cronenworth, Nola, Hosmer, Myers, and then Kim. Go ahead, complete your thought.
No, I guess I don't even know if Flaherty really going to come in at 45% on a burn slate. I just can't wrap my head around a burn slate and a fair Marquez price against the Cubs. I don't think it's crazy, but I don't think it's going to be more than 45% for Flaherty.
I mean, it's the Detroit effect as well, too. People just like to pick on certain teams, and rightfully so. Good pitcher, but that might be a tick high. But whatever it is, it could be 37%. He's going to be well owned, like we know that. And I think it's reasonable to suspect Flaherty, Burns, Marquez will be the 3 highest owned pitchers on DK. Somebody is tuned into the show right now. Give them the summary as far as the arms as we talk about our favorite stacks in a second.
Okay, so summary for pitching, on DK, Flaherty, Burns. Flaherty is gets the nose ahead of Burns for probably highest floor on the slate per dollar. Burns probably has slightly higher upside. Can't go wrong with either one. Marquez, 8,200, fair, very good price per dollar. Matchup against the strikeout heavy Cubs. Ownership is very high, which is a little bit scary there. Charlie Morton, it might be a larger field GPP play. Probably not going to play him in my single entry build, but I get it. The Yankees either strike out a lot or put up 7 or 8 runs, so I always try to target the Yankees at least a little bit. Bumgarner on DraftKings. Dean and I are in agreement on that. He has a great price, 7,100. Great matchup against this Pittsburgh team that is just not the same lineup that it was a month or two ago. There's some high K rates there, high ground ball rates. And they don't draw walks. So the ball's going in place, going to be on the ground, or they're going to strike out. Hopefully. That's our plan. If it was that easy, we'd win a lot of money. And also Eli Morgan, strikeout heavy Rangers, right? I think you're playing him on FanDuel, but are you having him on DraftKings as well?
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to be in my main lineup, but I make, other lineups, I think I'm going to make 7 or 8. I think it's 8 we have a reserve right now. So I'm going to have him at least one. Yeah, for sure. He's my favorite cheapie just on the slate. Good matchup, and we talked about that whatever the umpire matters, he's got the best one behind the plate calling balls and strikes. For what it's worth, Flaherty has and again, I say that because I don't really know how to quantify it. It's just notable, but Flaherty does have an extreme hitters umpire. Extreme hitters umpire for Tyler Mahle, Jack Flaherty, Dylan Cease, Casey Mize, Jose Barrios, Corbin Burns as well. So the 2 best pitchers, both have extreme hitter umpires. Extreme pitcher umpire Bill Miller specifically is behind the plate for Morgan. There is an extreme pitchers umpire in Miami for Luzardo and Fetty as well. Also for Taylor Hearn, other side of that Morgan game. So let's talk about some stacks. Do want to say hello once again to the chat. What up, chat? I've been ignoring you, but Devin has been compiling your questions for sure. Do subscribe. We appreciate that for the channel. Turn on notifications and ask some questions. Whatever. We talked about a lot of pitchers. You didn't hear what you want us to talk about? We're happy to do so. We didn't necessarily ignore anybody. Maybe somebody kind of fell by the wayside. Maybe we just don't like them. So, we don't have time for that. But now we're going to talk about some stacks. You guys want us to talk about specific stacks? We're happy to do so. Fire off those questions. Or if you like a 1v1 question, we can handle that as well. Interesting thing about stacks today, 14 games, 28 teams. I'm pulling up our consensus FIO rankings as far as stacks. Everybody ranks 5 of their favorite stacks, right? Only 6 made the board. So it's really congested as far as the favorite stacks. Do you want to play the game? Do you want to guess who those? You probably can figure it out. Who are the 5 or who are the 6 teams that made the board in our expert ranking as far as stacks today?
Okay. Boston.
All right. Show me Boston. Ding. That's number 1 on the board.
Ding, ding. I'm up to $100, right? Let's go with
you got another a cousin in the room that can throw it. You can't go back.
I'm for once alone. How about the Dodgers against the opener Pierce Johnson?
The Dodgers are not in the board. That's a weird one. Yeah,
I like that. That's good for GPPs. Okay.
We don't. It's going to be. It's the Forrest Gump, right? Who knows? It's a box of chocolates. What are we going to get out of San Diego? We have no idea. But Pierce Johnson's actually good. Like he's been good, but he's only going to pitch an inning or 2, I suppose. And then it's kind of a mixed bag. But yeah, and we don't have a lineup either. Nobody's playing Dodgers. It's the one lineup we don't have. An hour before the slate starts. But go ahead. Continue.
Here we go. Okay, Cleveland.
They are number 6. One person gave Cleveland a head nod.
Wow.
Yeah, you got the number 1 team and the number 16, Boston and Cleveland. You got the bun? What's the meat in the middle?
What's the meat in the middle? Do we have? Man, let me think here. I guess we're gonna need some cheaper hitters. Do we have Baltimore against good old revenge game Bundy?
Yeah, we got the ball. Well, there's more than one team that's in that game that's on the board, but yeah.
Okay, so we're hitting Baltimore. We're hitting both sides. We're hitting the Angels. So I have 4 of 6. Man, I don't think Tampa Bay, because like Suarez is actually pretty good. I just don't know how long he's going to stretch out. The bullpen is horrendous, though. Man, I don't know. I'm scrolling through.
You've done good so far. Atlanta versus Heaney because of Heaney's power. Nice ballpark. And Houston, no Alex Bregman. He's coming back soon. He's not back just yet. Do want to note Tampa is playing Nelson Cruz is playing first base, which might be the first time. Is it the first time ever? First time this season for sure, but I don't remember Nelson Cruz ever playing first base. They're in the National League. They didn't want to lose his stick. Nelson Cruz versus a lefty. It's got some value to it. And first base, how bad can you screw up at first? We'll see. And the other part is Tampa, you know how they're big they are on, platooning guys and lefty versus righty. Suarez probably doesn't go very deep. That's my problem with Tampa, and it's me being paranoid, but they're definitely going to lose a couple of these players throughout the game. Double swaps, switch hitting, these things will happen. Rasmussen probably doesn't go very deep. So there will be a double switch and somebody gets kicked out of this game. Who's that somebody going to be? I don't know. That's just the thought. That, to me, that just like weakens the Tampa Bay lineup overall as far as a stack. But if they put up 9 runs in the first 3 innings, who cares?
No, yeah, I totally agree. And I think we didn't mention Heaney when I gave the pitching rundown, but I think obviously the Rotogrinder staff here likes the Atlanta side, but I think you can have both. We kind of both agreed he might be worth a cup of coffee with a strikeout upside. But I definitely understand, stacking Atlanta for tournaments for sure.
Do you agree, by the way, Boston is the number 1 team on the board? Is that one of your favorites as well? I think they're the biggest team total at 6.37 versus Griffin Jacks. Obviously a nice ballpark environment there. And Fenway, that Minnesota ballprint is shaky. Let's say that 637 is the biggest team total, I think, by a pretty reasonable margin too, if I'm not mistaken. Just kind of scrolling through here. I don't think that was even close to 6.
That was spoiler alert. They were going to be the first stack out of my mouth. And everybody remembers the good with Griffin Jacks, the big 10K game. He wasn't that strikeout guy in the minors. So he hasn't had a lot of Ks since that performance. And I like the spot for Boston. And, it's a huge slate. So there might be 1 or 2 guys that are popular, but there's still, 7 other bats and plenty of power in this Red Sox lineup. So, if you're like, oh, I'm fading the chalk Red Sox, I don't think this is the slate to do that. I think, you can go for the bottom, right? Like Hunter Renfro's 5K. So
nobody's playing him at, batting 7th at home. It's not versus a lefty, but like, of course he can hit a couple homers. And I was yesterday days old when I found out Travis Shaw was still on the Red Sox.
How about it?
I didn't know that. Did you know that? I didn't know that. Good for he had a walk-off granny.
Yep, he had a walk-off granny. I don't mind doing like a 5-8 stack with Boston and pay up for Renfro, which sounds disgusting. But that's kind of where money's made. And I actually have a good Dave Potts chooses good shout out article bookmark from a couple of years he wrote, and he talked about how the bottom of the lineup is oftentimes as good as top of the lineup, and Dave Potts knows what he's doing. When Dave Potts speaks, I sure as hell listen. So I think a lot of people are just prone to stacking the top of every lineup, rolling with it, and don't have enough exposure because he's hitting 7th. I get it, but if he gets 4 at bats, he's fine. So I kind of like the bottom of this Boston order. I mean, you're going to get a little bit of leverage, if the top doesn't come through, and it's always scary to hit that submit button, but man, paying 5K for Renfro, that is something. But I'm gonna be doing it.
If you're gonna play Schwarber at 4-5 batting 2nd with the platoon versus Jacks, or Renfro at 5K batting 7th, but again, when you bring in the whole conversation of variance and ownership, and that's why you do it. But Schwarber is I haven't made cash lineup just yet on DK, but I would imagine he looks like a cash game staple to me at 4.5K batting 2nd versus Griffin Jacks. Ideally up for the power and Fenway on the right side as opposed to the left side, but left side the fence jets out pretty quickly, and lefty power is not great in Fenway unless you absolutely pull the ball down the line, you hit that pole, Pesky's pole, if you want to get all specific. So Shohei Ohtani is in Baltimore, batting first, leading off on the road, well positioned for 5 ABs versus Spencer Watkins and his not so talented friends in the bullpen. He is expensive, but he's pretty clearly, he's the best, he's probably not going to be the best hitter on the slate. That's just because there's so many guys hitting. But if you're forced to pick one, he's the one, right?
Yeah, he's the one. 6,400, you're paying for him, but on top of that, it's great hitting weather, right? You mentioned Watkins 10% K rate, like we discussed earlier, bad bullpen, but the hitting weather in Camden, I mean, it's just a premier matchup. He's getting on base today, right? He's getting on base today. It's happening. I mean, is he going to do a ton of damage? I don't know, but he's the highest projected.
Tell me this, not to cut you off, but we're kind of running short in time. And we got to bring Devin on in a second because he's compiling all those questions. And it's a quandary I have too, because this Angels lineup, we know, there's no Justin Upton, there's no Trout, there's no Rendon, there's Walsh. He's good. He's got some power. We got Stassi, good heading catcher. But how much do you make a full stack with the Angels and just sort of bet on the environment, bet against that Watkins and that bullpen? I guess Iglesias, Goslin, Fletcher. Are you enthused about a full stack from the Angels side? It's kind of what I'm what do you do with this team? We know Ohtani's good and Walsh is good, but what about everybody else?
That's such a big slate. I'm more prone to do secondary stack or one off them in my builds. I mean, Iglesias, 9%, David Fletcher 7% on a huge slate. Like, I think more people. That's kind of alluding to the fact that more people are like, oh crap, we got a full stack. I get it. Full stacking is oftentimes the way to go, but I think you got to pick your spots. This is a huge slate. I'm okay with secondary stacks. 2-man stacks or just one off and Otani in some of your builds.
Is there a stack we didn't mention that you want to talk about that feels like kind of sort of somewhat sneaky or off the board, or even just from a secondary perspective?
I guess like it's not my favorite, but if I'm on DK, if I'm 150, I want a little bit of leverage against Flaherty. If he's really going to come 40+% own, I get it. It's not great. But Detroit has been in some GPP winners this year, and just from game theory and getting that leverage. Like I said, I didn't think he'd come in higher than 45%, but if he does, and if I didn't have any Detroit exposure on the other side, obviously not paired with Flaherty if I'm 150, and I'd be kicking myself for sure. So that's just a high number for Flaherty.
I'm just playing the ownership stuff, and I want just to refresh. I wanted to make sure this is correct, but whenever you can get these Yankees so low owned, I know Charlie Morton's not the ideal pitcher to pick on. I'm looking at the ownership stuff, and it's a great hitting environment. The highest owned guy, according to our projections right now in DK in that game, is Joey Gallo at 6%, Soler at 5%. I love Soler today. And then this is also partially from like hashtag watching the games. He's been hitting ropes. Like he's been on everything. Like he's hit a couple homers, but he's been robbed several times too. Like, that account on Twitter, like barrel out. That's been Jorge Soler. And I love Soler versus Haney today. One of my favorite plays in the slate. I just think that game is just because better the talent of some of the hitters and the upside. But we got to bring Devin on, our producer extraordinaire. Devin's been compiling some questions. Devin, I assume you come with a bunch of questions for us?
I come with a lot of questions and not a lot of time, Dean.
What? Whose fault is that?
I have no idea. Do you want to do a quick cash rundown for all our cash grinders out there?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to focus mostly on DK. I do think for cash, you're playing two of the three of Flaherty, Burns, Marquez. I think that's really clear for me. If you're a catcher, if you need a salary saver, it's probably Wilson Ramos. If you have some money, Max Stassi. For sure. That's my favorite as far as the big spends. The cheapie is Wilson Ramos. Otani is a guy I want to get in my cash lineup. I don't know if you want to play him at first or the outfield just yet, probably first base. Rizzo is still super cheap. He's left on left, and he's looked rough, but probably more of a tournament guy right now. But Otani and Walsh. Walsh is 4.6K and DK. That's too cheap. I love Albies versus lefties. We got Albies versus a lefty today. He's been scuffling and disappointing me so much. Maybe more so for tournaments. You can step down to Kike Enrique Hernandez as well. I think Trey Turner is a little bit too cheap just for the talent on the road, locked in for those 5 ABs. I assume he's going to be leading off. If you need to save some salary, Jorge Polanco is the best salary saver there. Third base is tough. Ideally, I want to get Devers or J-Ram. I prefer Devers slightly over Jose Ramirez. The mid-tier guy is Josh Donaldson, but I don't like Donaldson. He's just, even his last home run was such a ridiculous cheapie. Love Riley for tournaments. Throw that out there. Let's see. Who do we have here at shortstop? It's kind of sort of, I don't love the shortstop position, to be honest. I think that's probably what you fill in last. I like Bogarts, but he's kind of pricey. I'm not prioritizing him over the other players. Story I'm good with, but I'm not prioritizing him. So shortstop is probably the last man I'll fill in. Schwarber, I talked about him. He's a great cash game play at 4.5K. Santander for Baltimore, a nice cheapie. Got to make things work from a salary perspective. 2.8K is a good price. Cross out Tyler O'Neill. He's on the IL. Or no, not on the IL. He's just not playing baseball tonight, or he's just not starting. I told you how much I love Jorge Soler tonight at 4.2K. Dallas Garcia is a nice cheapie for Texas. Just nice power upside. And Cedric Mullins, that's the last one I'll throw out there. Nelson Cruz like for tournaments, but I wouldn't play for cash. All right. I think we got enough, right?
Beautiful.
Is that good enough?
Quick golf clap for Dean, everyone. Smash the like button. We're going to get to stacks. Justin, we're switching up stacks game a little bit. So it's still 1 through 5, but it's 2 numbers. First one's for primary stack. Second number for your rating for secondary, or for a secondary stack. So we'll start with you, Rangers.
Rangers. Man, I'm going to go with 2.
For the primary. What about a secondary stack?
2.
All right. Dean?
Yeah, I'm not playing any Rangers as a stack, but so I'll say a 1. And I do think they kind of sort of you can plug a couple in to make stuff work if you want to. So I'll say 2, 1 and 2. I'm not big on him though. I like Morgan.
All right, sticking with Dean. Angels.
Yeah, this is the conversation we had. I love him much more as a secondary. So I'll say 3 and 5. I love the main pieces. Duh.
Yeah, I'll go 2 and 5. And quick plug: Kevin Roth has weather concerns with the Cubs, so stay tuned to Crunch Time later.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Got a little fly in the soup here.
Thanks, Roth.
Did you touch on Angels, Justin?
Yeah, 2 for primary and 5 for secondary. Like him for secondary.
Perfect. What about the Twins, Justin?
Twins, I don't hate it. I'm gonna go. Honestly, it's probably 2 for primary and a 3 for secondary.
This dude for Boston's been good. Like he's been canning a bunch of people out. Tanner Houck, he just doesn't go very long necessarily. So I'm not really on the Minnesota side, but if I need I'm not stacking Minnesota. So I'll say 1.5 and a 1.5.
All right, Dean, Dodgers.
Yeah, they're the wild card. I mean, one of the 2 of their good hitters probably aren't playing baseball tonight for what it's worth, but we don't know just yet. And they're really interesting from a tournament perspective because I'm telling you, nobody's playing the Dodgers tonight. So I'll say like 2.5 and 2.5. And I went ahead and dropped a link in chat. It's not just some concerns. It's orange. It's orange in Chicago. It says radar is significantly more active, and he capitalized the word significantly. So I'm scared now.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Dodgers is a 3 and a 3 for me.
All
for
right.
tournaments. Yep.
Justin, Red Sox.
Red Sox. It's a 5 and a 5. Love Boston tonight. They're my favorite stack.
Ding ding ding. We have a winner.
I like him a good bit as well. Lindor's back, by the way, for the Mets for what it's worth.
All right, still a couple of more stack-related questions. Alan wants to know, DK mini stack, are you going with Cleveland or Angels?
Angels for me.
Yeah, Angels for me as well.
I think I would agree. Tony wants to know, will Atlanta be low-owned on DK?
Yeah, we just went over that.
Oh,
yeah,
perfect.
we just went over that. Yeah, but
I tuned
love
out.
Albies and Soler. I love the Albies. Albies and Soler, like one of those 2 homers in the first inning, maybe both. Just one.
I'll pull the Grant card. I never listened when you talk, Dean.
Fair enough.
Let's see. BJ got DK cash talk. Tony got some umps. Dude wants to know, FanDuel tournament, looking for team stacks to play against potentially cheap but cheap but potentially chalky pitchers. Did you catch that? Do I need to repeat?
Yeah, you're talking about a cheap game stack against a popular pitcher.
Potentially popular. Like if if somebody tries to step down, who would
Any more adjective to start with P to make that work?
Just gonna just tie my tongue up into a knot.
What do you got, Justin? You were talking about picking on Flaherty. I don't think I want to do that.
No, I mean, if I'm throwing 150 out there, but honestly, on FanDuel, I don't know if he's going to garner enough ownership where I need the leverage on FanDuel. Like the sites are so different. So there really isn't much out there. Like in terms of cheap guys, like Fetty's 11%, but that's pretty much it according to our ownership projections. So it's not really a great night for that because of the huge slate.
I like the Brave or the Yankee side personally. I know those aren't necessarily cheap bats, but the same principle.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Big Hurt wants to know, FanDuel tournament, what's your best contrarian SP?
Ooh, go ahead, Dean.
What, FanDuel, he said?
FanDuel specific, yes.
I mean, is Eli Morgan, is he contrarian? What is his current ownership projection?
They're projecting him under sub 5% on FanDuel. So
it's Eli Morgan for me. If that's 10%, yeah, I'm good with that.
So
yeah.
I have to agree with you. It's Eli Morgan, and he's coming in low.
All right, and top DK tournament SPs for Kyle.
We both like Madison Bumgarner, which I hate saying that sentence out loud.
Ugh.
You know what? I'm really interested where ownership's going to go if this Cubs thing gets more murky by the top of the hour.
Yeah.
So we could see Flaherty push 50%, right? But I'm sure Bumgarner will pick up 5 to 10% ownership there, but it's still not enough for me to not like Bumgarner. I love too much about the matchup and the price, so it's still Bumgarner for me. If you think he comes in under 20%, it's him.
While we're in the conversation, somebody was asking about Meagle in chat. A couple of people were asking about Meagle.
Oh, Tyler McGill?
Yes, McGill.
I mean, I don't think so. Not for me. I don't want to pick on that San Fran side. They're probably going to have. Well, we have the lineup though. I assume they probably have eight righties just sitting right there. Is Ruff in the lineup? I assume Ruff is in the lineup. They're just really, really good at setting up the platoon lineups, and that's why the Giants have 12 guys that can hit, but only like 7 that are good against righties and 7 that are good against lefties. Let's see. I'm trying to scroll and see their lineup. How do they just ignore them?
Well, actually, they're rolling out 2, 4, 6 lefties because Miguel actually struggles against lefties. So he was one of the first guys I looked into. So I'm more prone to secondary stack the Giants. I don't think a lot of people are going to play them, but I kind of like the Giants as this little sneaky secondary. Take your pick with these lefties that are rolling out today.
And Ruff, of course, would hit against a lefty. I goofed, and for some reason I made Miguel a lefty in my head. But go ahead. The same point is made.
A lot of green on plate IQ against Miguel there.
Yeah.
And Justin, I didn't prep you for this one. We're ending on a strategy question. What's your strategy? One of maybe potential strategies that you're employing when you're doing your lineup construction. We'll start with Dean though. Give him a chance to think about it.
Well, my strategy is fluid now because my strategy is and I'm gonna this is a cheap plug. I'm listening to Kevin Roth because I'm really, really concerned about that orange currently in Chicago. I don't know what to do. And what does that game start at 8:00? I imagine. When does Chicago's games tip off? That's basketball. 8:05. So, we're gonna get even more thought on that. But I'm thrown for a loop because I love Marquez. Where does all that ownership go? Who are the 8:00 pitchers, Justin? Because I'm trying to think. So Burns is also 8:00 guy.
Burns is 8. Our boy Garcia from Houston is 8. Yeah, so that's
is that where it goes?
I mean, that's probably where it goes, and I'm okay if it goes there based upon what we talked about, right? So, I guess people might just pivot before lock. I mean, I think you're gonna see. I think you might see Flaherty bump up another 5%. I don't know. But in terms of strategy, it's such a huge slate, so it's hard to. There's really no leverage against cheap chalk, right? So you can't really go with that route. But for me, it's trying to get my internet to work so I can 150 max something again soon.
Mini stacks of Detroit, anybody?
Not really. Not for me. I'm not on it.
And go ahead.
If you're 150 maxing, I would have
sure.
7 to 10% kind of thing of secondary.
And we are well over time, Dean. So go ahead and take us home.
Who's coming up next, Evan?
We got Justin and Grant. Somebody STL. I gotta be specific with my Justins.
I thought Justin was here. That was Justin. That was Devin. That was baseball. I was Dean. Thanks for watching. Do hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Do all that good stuff. $10 off your first RG membership for one sport, baseball. All the sports with the exception of NASCAR. $10 as well. Hit that link there in chat. Thank you guys for watching, participating, asking questions, all that good stuff. Up against the clock. Devin's gonna be very angry at me when we get off air. We're out of here. Power!